Millions of people study the morning routines of tech billionaires. They read about the college dropouts who built unicorns and think if they just wake up at 4 a.m. and skip their degree, they'll build the next big thing. They are optimizing for the superficial form of success. This creates a statistical blind spot known as survivorship bias. We obsess over the one dropout who built a multi-billion-dollar empire, completely ignoring the massive invisible graveyard of thousands of dropouts who failed. We mistake the tiny surviving subgroup for the entire dataset. Even popular business methodologies fall into a similar trap. The lean startup model tells founders to make small, iterative tweaks to existing products based on customer feedback. Iteration might help you reach a local maximum, a slightly better version of what already exists, but it prevents you from zooming out to discover a global maximum, an entirely new, wildly profitable solution. Emulating the habits of winners or making tiny tweaks to their ideas is a strategic dead end. To achieve outsized results, you have to look past the surface-level results and master the underlying mechanisms of high-level thought. The late investor Charlie Munger recognized this flaw early on. He argued that simply memorizing isolated facts or mimicking past successes leaves you completely unequipped for high-level decision-making. Munger's solution was to build what he called a latticework of mental models. This is a conceptual structure in your brain built by synthesizing deep knowledge across multiple, diverse disciplines: psychology, physics, economics, and engineering. Relying on a single framework or intense ideology restricts your thinking. If you only understand economics, you try to solve every issue like an economist. As the old saying goes, to a person with only a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. The investors and founders who build empires don't share a single magic formula. Instead, they share this expansive latticework of mental tools, allowing them to approach any unknown situation with precision. When Spanx founder Sarah Blakely was growing up, her father established a highly unusual dinner table ritual. Every week, he would sit his children down and demand to know exactly what they had failed at. If Blakely hadn't failed at anything, her father would actually be disappointed. This practice mechanically rewires the ego. By normalizing failure and demanding it as proof of effort, it strips mistakes of their emotional punishment. Failure transforms from a devastating personal flaw into a raw, necessary metric of trying something new. Oprah Winfrey's transition from talk show host to multimedia executive was rooted in a leadership style that prioritized vulnerability over traditional corporate distance. By being transparent about personal, professional setbacks, she created an organizational culture built on radical empathy. This produced a tangible business advantage: psychological safety. When a team feels safe enough to express diverse perspectives and take creative risks without fear of punishment, it fosters a level of innovation and team loyalty that top-down hierarchies struggle to replicate. This cultural foundation allowed her to scale a single brand into a global empire worth billions. Before you can solve complex market demands or logistical nightmares, you have to master this inner layer of the latticework. You have to insulate yourself and your team from the friction of inevitable setbacks. Once the ego is managed, you need a mechanism to break down external barriers. When Elon Musk wanted to send a rocket to Mars in 2002, he was quoted up to $65 million for a single payload. To bypass these massive industry markups, he deployed a mental model from physics known as first principles. Musk refused to reason by analogy or simply accept the standard prices. He boiled the rocket down to its indisputable truths: aerospace-grade aluminum, titanium, copper, and carbon fiber. He priced those raw materials on the commodity market, found they cost about 2% of a finished rocket's price, and decided to build them himself. While Musk uses physical deconstruction, Charlie Munger relied on intellectual deconstruction through a tool called Inversion. Instead of asking how to achieve a goal, ask what actions guarantee failure and fiercely avoid them. Munger applied this inverse logic to his opinions. He wasn't entitled to hold an opinion unless he could state the opposing argument better than his opponent. First principles strips away bloated industry pricing, while Inversion strips away intellectual laziness. Whether you are building aerospace hardware or managing an investment portfolio, These deconstruction tools prevent you from being blinded by inherited assumptions. At the macro layer of the latticework, leaders defy standard business practices to sustain their growth. Investor Peter Thiel utilizes the 0-to-1 model, arguing that competing in existing crowded markets destroys profits. True value comes from uncovering a hidden secret and creating a pure monopoly. Bernard Arnault built the $50 billion LVMH luxury empire using what are called the anti-laws of marketing. While traditional brands pander to customer focus groups, Arnault strategically ignores consumer demands. His brands dictate aesthetic direction to the market, actively governing cultural taste rather than chasing it. But as these monopolies scale, they encounter a lethal threat. Amazon refers to this corporate decay as Day 2, a state where internal process overtakes customer focus, decision-making grinds to a halt, and the company slowly becomes irrelevant. To maintain startup velocity within a corporate behemoth, Amazon relies on Day 1 mental models. They separate decisions into irreversible one-way doors, which require deep analysis, and reversible two-way doors. When they encounter a two-way door, they execute immediately with only 70% of the data, knowing they can easily walk back a mistake. Sustaining a massive empire is highly unnatural. It requires a deliberate, strategic refusal to adopt sluggish, bureaucratic behaviors that automatically emerge when a company grows. Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bezos, and Bernard Arnault do not operate in the same industries, and they certainly don't follow the exact same playbook. What they share is a diverse cognitive tool belt that allows them to parse out solutions in highly complex environments. Trying to predict the future of the market is entirely futile. Charlie Munger often joked that listening to modern economic forecasters is just as crazy as ancient kings hiring someone to read sheep guts to anticipate the next big upheaval. You cannot control the market, but by building your own latticework of counterintuitive mental models, you equip yourself for the unknown. You stop trying to copy the superficial form of success, and you finally adopt a system of thought that prioritizes function over form and synthesis over imitation.